Hi, welcome to Quiet Law YouTube channel. There is a world that exists just beneath the noise of everyday life. A world of ancient forests and silent oceans, of creatures great and small, going about their lives with a kind of quiet purpose that most of us will never fully witness. Tonight, we step into that world together. Over the next hour, we are going to travel through some of the most tender, surprising, and wonderful truths about the animal kingdom. These are not myths or legends. These are real things happening right now, somewhere on this planet as you listen. So find a comfortable place to rest. Let your breath slow down, and allow yourself to simply wonder, because the natural world has been keeping the most beautiful secrets, and tonight, it is ready to share them. We begin with love. Not the idea of it, but the living, breathing, everyday practice of it, as animals have quietly understood it for millions of years. Off the coast of California, in the cold green shallows of the Pacific, sea otters do something that has captured the hearts of everyone who has ever seen it. When they sleep on the water, they reach out and take the paw of the otter floating beside them. It is called a raft, this little gathering of otters drifting together on the tide, and they hold hands so that the current does not carry them apart while they dream. A simple gesture, a profound one. High above, in the skies over North America, bald eagles are choosing partners for life. These great birds, with their fierce golden eyes and wingspan wide enough to shadow a doorway, are among the most loyal creatures in the sky. Once bonded, a pair will return to the same nest year after year, adding to it each season, until some of these nests grow so large and heavy they can weigh more than a ton. A home built slowly, carefully together. And then there are swans. When two swans face each other on still water, dipping and curving their long necks in greeting, their bodies naturally form the shape of a heart. It is not something they are trying to do. It is simply what love looks like when it moves through them. Few sights in nature are quite so quietly perfect. In the warm cages and canopies of tropical forests, lovebirds tend to each other with extraordinary care. They preen one another, carefully working through every feather, grooming the places the other cannot reach. It is called allopreening, and it is as much about trust as it is about hygiene. To let another creature that close, to be still and patient while they tend to you, is its own kind of intimacy. Out over the open ocean, the wandering albatross spends years of its youth learning a single thing: how to court its future mate. These birds develop elaborate dances, a choreography of bows and calls and wing spreads, that they practice and refine over many meetings. When at last two albatrosses find their match, that dance becomes theirs alone, a private language between two birds who may live and love together for 60 years or more. Deeper in the jungle canopy, gibbons greet each morning with song. A mated pair will lift their voices together at dawn in what researchers call a duet, a rising and falling call that echoes through the forest and announces to the world that this territory and this bond belongs to them. It is territorial, yes, but it is also something else. Something that sounds unmistakably like joy. As twilight falls across the wild places of North America and Europe, wolves begin to howl. A lone wolf calls out, and one by one, the others answer. The sound builds into something extraordinary, a chorus shaped by dozens of individual voices, each slightly different, weaving together into something greater than any of them alone. Wolves howl to locate each other, to reinforce their bonds, to say, "I am here, and so are you, and that matters." Few moments in the animal kingdom carry the weight of grief as visibly as an elephant's mourning. When a member of the herd dies, the others do not simply move on. They stay. They touch the body gently with their trunks. They stand in quiet vigil, sometimes for hours, sometimes returning to the same bones years later. Scientists have documented this behavior across many herds, and the conclusion is difficult to avoid. Elephants remember. Elephants grieve. Elephants know that something irreplaceable has been lost. Now consider the vampire bat, whose name suggests menace, but whose behavior suggests something closer to community. These small creatures of the night do something remarkable. When a bat returns from a successful feed, it will regurgitate blood to share with a hungry roost mate. And it remembers. Over time, bats build networks of reciprocal generosity, helping those who have helped them before. In the dark of the cave, a quiet economy of kindness keeps everyone alive. In the dry scrublands of southern Africa, Meerkats take turns at the work of care. While the adults of the group head out to forage, designated babysitters stay behind with the young pups, watching over them, keeping them warm, teaching them the sounds that mean danger. These sitters go without food for the day. They do it willingly, because in a meerkat family, the young belong to everyone. The African wild dog lives by a code that would humble many. When the pack returns from a hunt, they do not eat by rank or strength. They feed the weakest members first. The injured, the elderly, the pups waiting at the den. Only once the most vulnerable have eaten do the stronger dogs take their share. In a world often framed as survival of the fittest, the wild dog quietly redefines what fitness means. And finally, in the coldest place on Earth, emperor penguins stand together in the Antarctic winter in temperatures that can drop to -60 degrees. No shelter, no warmth except each other. And so they huddle, thousands of them, pressed close in a living mass that slowly rotates. The birds on the outside edge, taking the worst of the wind, gradually shuffle inward as those at the warm center move out to take their turn at the cold. Every bird freezes a little, so that no bird freezes completely. It is survival as a shared act, as radical generosity, wrapped in feathers in the dark, at the end of the world. That is where we leave part 1. In the quiet space between a held paw and a howling chorus, in the grief of elephants and the generosity of wild dogs, we find something that is not so different from what we ourselves reach for when we love well. We have seen how animals love. Now we listen to how they speak. Because the animal kingdom has languages older than any human tongue, systems of meaning built not from letters or grammar, but from sound and movement and light. And the more closely we listen, the more we realize that the conversation never stopped. We simply forgot how to hear it. Somewhere in the deep ocean, a humpback whale is composing. Not repeating, composing. The songs of humpback whales are not fixed calls passed down unchanged. They evolve. New phrases appear, spread across populations, and within a season, whales thousands of miles apart are singing the same new song. No one taught them. They listened, they learned, and they changed. In the dark cathedral of the deep sea, culture moves like a current. Dolphins do not call to one another the way most animals do. Each dolphin develops, in the first weeks of its life, a unique signature whistle, a sound that belongs to it alone. And other dolphins use that whistle to call them by name. When a dolphin hears its own signature played back, it responds. When a dolphin calls for a companion, it uses that companion's sound. We spent centuries wondering if any other creature could recognize individual identity the way we do. The dolphins already knew. On the grasslands of North America, prairie dogs are having detailed conversations that we are only beginning to translate. Researcher Kon Slobodikov spent decades recording their calls and discovered that these small burrowing animals can communicate the size, shape, color, and speed of an approaching predator in a single complex call. They can describe a human in a yellow shirt moving quickly versus one in blue moving slowly. The word language is not an overstatement. It is simply accurate. Inside a beehive, a scout returns from a flower field she has discovered, and she begins to dance. The waggle dance, as it is called, encodes precise information. The direction of the food source relative to the sun, the distance to travel, the quality of what awaits. Other bees watch, learn the coordinates, and fly directly there without the scout leading the way. It is one of the most sophisticated communication systems on Earth, delivered entirely through movement, in the dark, on the surface of a honeycomb. Ravens, it turns out, make friends. Not allies. Not temporary flock companions. Friends. Studies have shown that ravens form long-term bonds with specific individuals, consoling one another after conflicts, defending one another from rivals, and appearing to take notice when a friend is absent. They are also intensely political, tracking grudges, forming coalitions, and remembering past interactions with remarkable accuracy. The raven watching you from the fence post is not simply looking. It is thinking, and it is remembering. Among bonobos, the great apes of the Congo, conflict resolution takes a form that is both tender and deliberate. When tension rises within the group, bonobos turn to affection. Grooming, touching, embracing. They de-escalate through connection rather than dominance. The result is one of the most peaceful great ape societies ever observed. They discovered, long before we formalized it in any philosophy. That closeness disarms. Orca-pods are not just family groups. They are schools of tradition. Mothers teach their calves specific hunting techniques that vary from pod to pod, techniques passed down across generations, learned through observation and practice. One pod may herd fish into shallow water. Another may beach themselves temporarily to catch sea lions. These are not instincts. They are knowledge, maintained and transmitted across decades. Orcas have culture, and they are careful to preserve it. In the forests of New Zealand, quokka parrots do something that has only recently been documented. Male quokka will seek out calcium-rich food sources and carry them specifically to feeding females. The females, preparing to lay eggs, have increased calcium needs, and somehow the males know this. They find what is needed, and they bring it. The act of noticing what another needs, and quietly providing it, is one we tend to think of as uniquely human. The quokka does not agree. The narwhal's long spiral tusk, which can grow to nearly 10 feet, was once called the unicorn horn of the sea. For a long time, no one was entirely certain what it was for. Then researchers discovered that the tusk is threaded with millions of nerve endings, making it an extraordinarily sensitive sensory organ. A narwhal can detect changes in temperature, salinity, and pressure in the surrounding water through its tusk alone. It is, in essence, reading the ocean with every movement of its head, gathering information about its environment in ways our instruments are only beginning to approximate. What emerges from all of this is something remarkable. These animals are not reacting blindly to the world. They are interpreting it, communicating about it, learning from it, and teaching what they know. The line we once drew between instinct and intelligence grows thinner with every study, every dawn chorus, every dolphin calling a name across open water. Carry that thought forward into the next part. Because it turns out that some animals have not just learned to communicate, they have learned to build. Humans like to think of civilization as their invention. Cities, agriculture, architecture, engineering. But walk through the right forest, or kneel beside the right patch of earth, and you will find that the blueprints were already drawn, long before we arrived. Ants have been farming for 50 million years. Certain species maintain herds of aphids, tiny sap-drinking insects that produce a sweet liquid called honeydew when stroked in a specific way. The ants protect the aphids from predators, shelter them during cold nights, and move them to better plants when the food source runs low. In return, the aphids produce on demand. It is animal husbandry, refined across millennia, by creatures the size of a comma. But leafcutter ants take agriculture further still. These remarkable insects cut pieces of leaf not to eat, but to carry underground to their fungus gardens. The fungus feeds on the leaf material, grows, and becomes the ant's primary food source. The ants maintain the gardens with extraordinary care, weeding out competing molds, applying antibacterial secretions to keep the crop healthy. They have been cultivating this same species of fungus for tens of millions of years, and neither the ant nor the fungus can survive without the other. It is one of the oldest agricultural partnerships on Earth. When a column of army ants encounters a gap in the terrain, a bridge of living bodies appears. Individual ants grip one another and hold their position, sometimes for hours, while tens of thousands of their colony mates walk across their backs. The bridge adjusts in width and length based on the volume of traffic moving over it. When the crossing is done, the bridge disassembles itself, and the ants who formed it rejoin the column. No engineer designed this. No instruction was given. It emerged spontaneously from the collective intelligence of the group. Termite mounds are a feat of passive architecture that modern engineers have studied and struggled to replicate. Some mounds rise 6 meters tall and maintain an internal temperature that varies by less than a degree regardless of the heat outside. They achieve this through a network of ventilation shafts and chimneys designed with such precision that warm, stale air rises and escapes while cool, fresh air is drawn in below. The termites themselves are nearly blind, and yet the structure they build together is, relative to their size, the most sophisticated climate-controlled structure on the planet. The weaver bird approaches nest building as an art form. Using only its beak, a male weaver will take individual strands of grass and weave them, loop by loop, into an enclosed flask-shaped nest that hangs from a branch like a lantern. The construction is so structurally precise that it can resist wind, rain, and the attempts of predators to pull it apart. Females inspect each nest carefully before approving it. If the workmanship does not meet her standards, she will reject it, and the male must begin again. Squirrels, famously, bury nuts for winter. And squirrels, famously, forget where some of them are buried. What they leave behind, scattered beneath soil across vast areas of forest, are seeds. Trees that would otherwise have no means of dispersal find themselves planted far from their parent, given space and light and a chance at growth. The eastern forests of North America were partly shaped by this forgetting. The squirrel was not trying to plant a forest. It was simply being a squirrel. The forest grew anyway. In the open grasslands of South America, armadillos do not always live alone. Their burrows, dug with powerful clawed forelimbs, are often shared. Other animals, from rabbits to burrowing owls to possums, move into abandoned armadillo tunnels and make them home. A single armadillo, over its lifetime, may provide shelter for dozens of other species without ever intending to. Infrastructure, built by one, shared by many. On a coral reef, the clownfish and the sea anemone have worked out an arrangement so mutually beneficial that it borders on elegant. The anemone's stinging tentacles deter most fish, but the clownfish is immune. It lives within the tentacles, protected from predators, and in return keeps the anemone clean, drives away butterfly fish that would eat it, and its movement aerates the water around the anemone's base. Neither could thrive as well alone. Together they have been thriving for millions of years. And at the edge of the reef, small fish queue in an orderly line at what researchers have taken to calling a cleaning station. The cleaner wrasse, a small, brilliantly striped fish, runs these stations, removing parasites and dead tissue from the mouths and gills of much larger fish who arrive specifically to be serviced. The large fish hold still, open their mouths wide, and wait patiently while the tiny cleaner works. The cleaner gets a meal. The client leaves healthier. Even the ocean, it seems, has service economies. We have walked through forests of forgotten seeds and underground fungus gardens, past living bridges and climate-controlled towers. What lives in these places is not so different from what lives in our own cities. The impulse to build, to cooperate, to sustain one another, is not a human idea. It is a planetary one. Now we step into a different kind of wonder, one that has no practical purpose at all. We step into beauty. Not everything in nature exists because it is useful. Some things exist because they are extraordinary. And the animal kingdom, it turns out, has a sense of the spectacular. In the forests of Australia and New Guinea, the bowerbird builds something that has no parallel in the animal world. To attract a mate, the male bowerbird constructs an elaborate structure called a bower, an arched tunnel or platform woven from sticks, and then decorates it. He collects objects of specific colors, blue is often preferred, and arranges them in patterns around the entrance. Bottle caps, berries, feathers, flowers, pieces of glass. He adjusts the display constantly, studying it from the female's perspective, rearranging items that are not quite right. This is not instinct arranged randomly. This is curation. This is aesthetic judgment. This is, by any reasonable definition, art. On the sandy floors of the seas around Japan, a small pufferfish spends 7 to 9 days creating something that no one knew existed until 1995. Working alone, using only its fins, it sculpts an intricate circular pattern in the sand, up to 2 meters across, with radiating ridges and valleys, and a smooth central chamber. The pattern serves to attract females and to cushion the eggs from current. When a female arrives, inspects the design, and approves, she lays her eggs in the center. The male then tends them carefully. No 2 circles are exactly alike. Each one is the work of a single small fish, driven by something that looks very much like the need to make something beautiful. The lyrebird of Australia is perhaps the most gifted mimic in the natural world. It can reproduce, with uncanny accuracy, the calls of dozens of other bird species. But it does not stop at birds. Lyrebirds have been recorded reproducing the sound of chainsaws, car engines, camera shutters, crying babies, and human voices. They incorporate these sounds into their own songs, weaving them into complex compositions. They are not parroting randomly. They are composing, building soundscapes from everything the forest and the world has offered them. Dragonflies, those ancient and dual-winged insects, perform something that mirrors, without planning to, one of the most iconic symbols of human love. During mating, A male and female dragonfly link together and curve their bodies into a shape that is, unmistakably, a heart. They hold this position while hovering above the water, wings blurring, sunlight moving through them like stained glass. It lasts only moments, but it has been happening since before the dinosaurs, in every warm summer, above every quiet pond. In the open meadows of early spring, European hares engage in what looks, at first glance, like a fight. Two hares rising on their hind legs, boxing furiously with their front paws. What was long assumed to be male competition turns out, more often, to be a female testing a persistent male she is not yet ready to accept. She boxes him. He must endure it, or prove himself worthy of her time. It is the original test of patience, played out at speed, in a field of green, under a pale morning sky. A male genter penguin, when he has decided upon his mate, does not simply present himself. He searches the beach for the most perfect pebble he can find, smooth and round and carefully chosen, and he carries it to her. He sets it at her feet. If she accepts it, placing it into the rim of their shared nest, they are bonded for the season. On the rocky beaches of Antarctica, penguins have been observed guarding particularly fine pebbles jealously, hiding them from rivals. The right stone matters. The gesture matters. Even here, at the frozen edge of the world, courtship is its own form of art. Seahorses are among the most devoted partners in the ocean. A mated pair will meet each morning, entwining their tails around the same piece of coral or sea grass as the first light filters through the water, and perform a slow, swaying dance together. They change color as they move, their skin shimmering through subtle shifts of gold and amber and pale green, synchronizing their hues with each other as the dance continues. They greet this way every single day. And in the seahorse world, it is the male who becomes pregnant, carrying the young in a special pouch until they are ready to be born. He gives birth. She returns to greet him the next morning. What we have just witnessed is a world that does not create beauty by accident. The bowerbird rearranges his gallery until it is right. The pufferfish traces its geometry in the sand before dawn. The lyrebird listens to the world and sings it back. Something in the animal kingdom reaches toward wonder, the same reaching that lives at the heart of every human painting, every love song, every carefully chosen gift. Now the tone shifts, because wonder also wears the face of endurance. And in the next part, the animal kingdom shows us what it means to truly go the distance. Nature is not always gentle, but it is almost always astonishing. And some of the greatest acts of wonder in the animal kingdom are not acts of beauty or love, but of sheer, extraordinary persistence. Every year, the Arctic tern makes a journey that staggers the imagination. This small seabird, weighing no more than 100 grams, migrates from its Arctic breeding grounds to the Antarctic and back again. The round trip covers roughly 44,000 miles. In a single lifetime, an Arctic tern may travel the equivalent of 3 trips to the moon and back. It follows the sun from one polar summer to another, living in more daylight than any other creature on Earth. It does not stop because the distance is enormous. It simply continues, as it always has, following the light. In the eucalyptus forests of Australia, koalas cling to their trees in a way that for a long time seemed like pure laziness. In fact, it is survival strategy. On the hottest days, koalas descend to the lower, cooler parts of tree trunks and press their bodies against the bark, which can be up to 9 degrees cooler than the surrounding air. The tree becomes a living air conditioner. The koala, often mocked for doing very little, is in fact constantly managing its core temperature with quiet precision, using only the wisdom of its forest. The three-toed sloth moves so slowly that algae grows in its fur. But this is not a flaw. It is a feature. The algae gives the sloth a greenish tint that helps it blend into the forest canopy. In return, certain moths and insects live within the fur, providing nutrients that enrich the algae. The sloth is not one animal. It is an ecosystem. It carries a living garden on its back, and everything within it has come to depend on the slowness, the stillness, the particular unhurried existence of its host. The mantis shrimp is small enough to sit in the palm of your hand, and carries within its compact body one of the most violent and precise mechanisms in the natural world. Its striking appendages can accelerate faster than a bullet from a gun, reaching speeds of over 20 meters per second, and striking with a force capable of shattering aquarium glass. The blow generates a cavitation bubble, a tiny implosion of water that delivers a second impact, even if the first misses. The mantis shrimp hits twice with one strike. It has been doing this for hundreds of millions of years, and it remains one of the most effective predators in the ocean. In the midnight zones of the world's oceans, jellyfish drift in blooms that number in the millions, their translucent bodies pulsing with cold light. Bioluminescence, the production of living light, illuminates them from within, turning dark water into something that belongs in a dream. Some species flash to attract prey. Others light up to confuse predators. Some appear to glow simply as a consequence of movement through water disturbed by other light-producing organisms. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. The deep ocean, in the right moment, burns blue and green and gold, and the jellyfish move through it like living lanterns. While the jellyfish drift above, far below on the reef, coral polyps are waking up. Each night, as darkness falls over the ocean, these tiny animals extend their delicate tentacles into the surrounding water and begin to feed. During the day they are still, their algae partners photosynthesizing in the light. But at night the reef comes alive, every polyp reaching into the dark, every tentacle hunting microscopic life in the current. The coral reef, which appears from above to be a fixed and ancient structure, is in truth an event, happening every single night, in the dark, on the ocean floor. There is something deeply reassuring about these stories. The Arctic tern does not know the full distance of its journey. The koala does not calculate temperature differentials. The sloth does not curate its ecosystem intentionally. They simply live as completely and as faithfully as possible within the truth of what they are. And in doing so, they endure. One last part remains, and it reaches back to the very beginning of things. Some things in nature are so old, so strange, so quietly magnificent, that they feel less like biology and more like poetry. This final act belongs to them. The Nautilus has been swimming in the world's oceans for approximately 500 million years. It predates the dinosaurs. It predates the forests. In all that time, it has barely changed, because it found something so close to perfect that change was unnecessary. And within its shell, coiled in a logarithmic spiral of extraordinary mathematical precision, you can find the golden ratio. The same proportion that appears in the spiral of galaxies, in the curl of waves, in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. The Nautilus does not know it carries this pattern. It simply grows, as it has always grown, in perfect proportion, in perfect time. Beneath the forest floor, invisible and ancient, the largest living network on Earth is quietly at work. Trees communicate through a web of fungal threads called mycorrhizae, so dense and so vast that a single teaspoon of forest soil can contain miles of these filaments. Through this network, trees share nutrients, send chemical distress signals when under attack, and direct sugars toward younger trees growing in shade. Old trees, sometimes called mother trees, are hubs in this network, connected to hundreds of others, giving more than they take. The forest is not a collection of individuals competing for resources. It is a community, and it has always been one. On summer evenings across the meadows and forests of North America and Southeast Asia, fireflies do something that should not be possible, and yet demonstrably is. They synchronize. In certain forests in Tennessee, in certain river valleys in Thailand, thousands of fireflies will begin to flash in unison, the whole forest pulsing on and off in coordinated waves of light. No conductor leads them. No signal begins the sequence. Each firefly adjusts its own rhythm slightly in response to its neighbors, and from that small, repeated local adjustment, a collective spectacle emerges that can be seen from miles away. It is one of the most beautiful examples of spontaneous order in the natural world. The octopus is an animal that thinks with its entire body. 2/3 of its neurons are distributed through its 8 arms, each of which can taste, touch, and make decisions semi-independently. And when an octopus feels something, it shows it. Researchers observing sleeping octopuses have documented rapid, dramatic color changes moving across the skin, pale to dark to brilliant patterned, cycling through what appears to be vivid dreaming. The octopus cannot tell us what it dreams, but its skin speaks in its sleep, shifting through colors and textures that suggest an inner life of far greater richness and complexity than we had imagined. And then there is the mother octopus. When she finds a suitable den and lays her eggs, a cluster of tens of thousands of them. She makes a choice from which she will not deviate. She stays. She aerates the eggs constantly with gentle pulses of water from her siphon. She cleans them. She guards them from every predator with the full force of her intelligence and her remarkable body. And during all of this, she does not eat. Not once. For weeks, sometimes months, she gives everything she has to the eggs she will never see hatch, because she will not survive to that day. When at last the eggs begin to open, she releases one final burst of water to help carry her young into the world. And then her body spent, she lets go. It is the most complete act of love in the animal kingdom. No reward, no recognition, no future in which to rest. Only the gift, given completely, in the dark, at the bottom of the sea. And so we arrive at the end of our journey through the animal kingdom. From sea otters holding hands on the tide, to a mother octopus giving everything in the darkness of the ocean floor, we have traveled through a world that is older and stranger and more tender than we often remember to notice. What these creatures share, across every ocean and forest and frozen plain, is a kind of wholeness. They do not hold back from the full expression of what they are. They love without reservation, build without ceasing, endure without complaint, and at the very end, they give without asking anything in return. They have been doing this for hundreds of millions of years, long before any of us arrived to wonder at it, and they will continue long after we have stopped watching. The animal kingdom does not need our attention to be magnificent. It simply is. It always has been. Tonight, for a little while, we were fortunate enough to remember that. Rest now. The world outside is full of creatures moving quietly through their lives, holding on, calling out, building something, finding their way home. You are part of the same world that made them. And it is, in every way that matters, a beautiful one. Good night, and have a great, relaxing sleep.